Hello, and once again, welcome back to the series where I beat every single PlayStation 2 game ever. Today, I am venturing into a dark place, a game so violent that it was banned in several countries, Manhunt, a game developed by Rockstar in 2003. Manhunt is a stealth-based game that follows the main character, James Earl Cash, as he unwillingly makes his way through Carcer City. We begin by getting executed after being on death row for 3 years. But what's this? I'm not dead? No. I wake up to a voice saying that the world thinks I'm dead and telling me to put an earpiece in. He says that he will let me free if I murder all of the gang members that were sent to kill me. I head outside to begin the gruesome journey. I have to find weapons on the ground and sneak around using shadows to execute all of the gang members. Meanwhile, the man talking to me is filming everything. He refers to himself as the director and tells me what to do throughout the game. Manhunt is all about stealth, so it has several mechanics relating to stealth. The biggest one is the shadows. When you are standing in a shadow, you are completely hidden, even if the enemy is standing 2 feet in front of you.
Screw it. He's giving me the slip.
I don't think that this is very realistic. Shadows are your best friend if you're like me and bad at stealth games. If you are seen by an enemy, you're able to run away and hide in a shadow as long as they don't see you go into it. They are very powerful. I use shadows constantly through the whole game, and without them, I would have struggled way more than I already did. There's also a noise level. You can make noise doing various things, such as running, throwing objects, and walking on certain materials. If an enemy hears any sound, they will become alert and seek you out. You can also use noise to your advantage to lure enemies to you. I only used that mechanic a few times as it wasn't really that useful. For the actual killing, there are really only 2 options: executions and shooting. I'll get to the guns later. To execute an enemy, you need a weapon. Once you have a weapon, you have to sneak up behind somebody and press X. While doing this, you can also hold X to perform a more brutal execution. This feature is basically useless. It takes longer to do, so you could be seen, and I don't think it does anything for you. So I only did hasty executions for the whole game, except for one mission that requires you to do otherwise. There are 4 types of weapons available: green, blue, red, and yellow. Yellow weapons are throwables you can use to make noise. Green is a one-time use weapon. Blue and red are multi-use weapons. The downside about them is that they make noise when performing an execution. However, I don't recall that ever having any effect on my gameplay whatsoever, so I just used them whenever I had them. If you really wanted, you could try straight up fighting people, but that isn't really a viable option. Manhunt has 20 levels that they call scenes because you're being filmed. After every scene, you get a screen that tells you the time spent, how many kills you got, and gives you a star rating. This rating means nothing to me. You can unlock bonus stuff by getting a good rating, but I only care about beating the main game. For me, the first quarter or so of the game all blends together. It's a whole lot of waiting, getting spotted, running away into a shadow, and killing. But then I got to the 5th level, Fueled by Hate. The first part isn't bad, it's more of the same stuff. Then you get to the crane section. You have to make your way through more enemies and get a gas can for the crane. You can't attack while holding the gas can, so you have to put it down and pick it back up while bringing it to the crane. Once you get to the crane, you fill it up, get in, and oh, I can't do anything. That's a weird glitch. Let's try that again. Oh, okay. It's broken again. I don't know what's wrong with this crane. It's not just me either. I looked it up and a lot of other people had the same problem. I don't know what I did to fix it, but the 3rd time it worked. Now that the crane has been defeated, the next section sucks. There aren't a lot of enemies here, but their patterns make it impossible to do it stealthy. The area is also small, so it's hard to get out of sight and get into a shadow. Despite that, I managed to get through it on the first try. Then, oh no, another crane. Please just work. Of course not. Yeah, for some reason, this crane is also broken. Sadly, you have to use both of them, so there is no skipping it. After the first attempt, it took me 20 more minutes to get back to the crane. I don't know why I had so much trouble. I already did it on the first try. In case you were wondering, the crane also didn't work the second time. After another 20 minutes, the crane worked on the 3rd try again. Maybe that's the secret. You have to beat the section 3 times to show your worth. Then it's just a few more guys before the level ends. The game says it took me 45 minutes to beat that level, but it was actually closer to 90. To make a long story short, this level is broken and I hate it. After that super fun level, the game introduces guns. Guns are very useful to kill from afar. They're easy to use because they automatically lock onto enemies as long as they're in sight. Guns are also dangerous in the enemy's hands. If you get caught in the open, they can tear you to shreds pretty quickly. I have mixed opinions on guns in Manhunt. From this point on, most of the levels have guns in them. On one hand, the mechanics of them are good. The lock-on, the long distance killing, and if you're close enough, it aims for a headshot, which is a one-hit kill. It's also a good option if you mess up being stealthy and to kill groups of enemies. But on the other hand, I feel like they don't belong in this game, at least not in almost every level. Having a few levels using guns would be fine to mix it up a bit, but them being the primary weapon for half of the game, I don't like. I feel like it completely disregards the stealth aspect of the game. It's not like a gun is very quiet. A lot of the levels with guns can still be done with stealth, but if I have a gun, why would I not use it? It's a lot easier than sneaking around. Also, anytime you have access to a gun, the enemies do too. And when there are a lot of enemies with guns, it can be difficult to fight back, especially in the later levels when they have automatic rifles. A few levels later, the story shifts gears. Throughout the first bit of the game, you are doing whatever the director says. Kill these guys, go here, go there, kill some more guys. Then, the director kidnaps Cash's family, and if I get seen, a family member dies. In my run, I got 2 of the 4 killed. Whoops. Then, as part of the film, he orders my death as well. I managed to escape, and now I am seeking revenge. Of course, this is not what the director had in mind, so he sends his right-hand man, Ramirez, to recapture me. Along with his men, Ramirez semi-traps me in a building. After killing a lot of his men and making it to the top floor of the building, I find Ramirez. He runs off and I have to kill him before he calls for backup. This is the only time in the game where there is a timer. It isn't really that bad, just a little stressful trying to fight your way through more enemies with a sense of urgency. Once I escape the area, I get rescued by a reporter. She explains that the director's name is Lionel Starkweather, a man who now makes movies for a snuff film ring. That information is enough to lead me to where I need to go to get revenge. Going back to the guns, I said that I don't like them being the primary weapon for the game's sake. However, I do like them for my own sake. I don't know what it is about stealth games, but I am very bad at them. I don't know if it's because I'm impatient or if I simply am just bad at being stealthy. I feel like that's always been the case for me. In the majority of stealth games I play, I end up just blasting through the enemies with no regard for anything. It's not that easy to do that in Manhunt though. So instead what I did is I always got an enemy's attention, then ran away from them into a shadow. Then when they chase me down and eventually give up, I kill them. I used that strategy for about 80% of the executions I performed. I find it very interesting that at the time, Manhunt was very controversial. The game is clearly violent and it shows brutal killing. There was a big debate in the media about that violence. Supposedly, the staff developing Manhunt were uncomfortable with making a game portraying such real violence. People thought the game was so bad that it was banned in New Zealand, Australia, Germany, and restricted to adults only in Canada. The brutality of it is one of the big reasons why the game is so well known. It stood out from a lot of games at the time, but now you have all sorts of games portraying violence. Some realistic, some just brutal, some simple, and some cartoonish. It's fascinating to me how people change and how they look at media differently. Violence is such a normal thing nowadays. From video games to movies to TV, it's everywhere. I don't know about you, but I think there are much worse games in terms of violence. So Manhunt doesn't really stand out to me playing for the first time in 2023. It just feels like any other stealth-based game. Anyways, going back to the game, I slowly made my way to Starkweather. I eventually got cornered by the police in a train yard. They were ready to kill me, but more of Starkweather's men killed the police and took me to his mansion so he could execute me himself. Unfortunately for Starkweather, his men get distracted by Pigsy. Pigsy is a maniac who wears a pig's head and uses a chainsaw. He was locked up and managed to escape. I have no idea why he was locked up. He was shown a couple of times throughout the game, but not with any context. I guess Starkweather just had a pet psychopath because he wanted to. Confusion aside, I really liked the Pigsy fight. This past October, I got into watching horror movies, and I had watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the first time about a week before playing Manhunt. So I felt like I was in the movie running away from Leatherface, and I'm sure that's what inspired Pigsy. There's no way it wasn't. This is also the one and only real fight in this game. The first section, you have to find a weapon and perform an execution 3 times while staying hidden so you don't get a chainsaw to the face. Then you get Pigsy to fall through a grate in order to get his chainsaw. Starkweather sends out his last remaining men to try to kill me. I take them out and use the chainsaw to break open the office door. This tiny fight confused me. When I first went in, Starkweather shot me a few times, so I was like, uh-oh, how am I going to approach this? I kept hidden while trying to get closer, but he wouldn't stop moving. At some point, I realized that he stopped shooting at me, so I just ran at him and killed him. Starkweather is dead and his snuff film ring was exposed. Hooray. I'm still caught up on him having a gun though. Was it a glitch that he stopped shooting me, or was he not supposed to have a gun in the first place? I really want to know. Either way, the game is over. Manhunt was an interesting experience. While I don't care too much for stealth games, the theme and atmosphere was unique. Throughout the game, I was on edge with the eerie sounds and the dark looks. Being forced to partake in a snuff film with real death is a very cool concept for a game. You're not killing to make the film good, you're doing it to survive the twisted director. So the story and overall feeling of the game is really cool, but the actual gameplay is less so. Without the atmosphere, this game feels pretty basic. It has simple stealth mechanics and there really isn't a lot of variation between levels. The levels that rely heavily on guns towards the end were more difficult than I think was necessary. I think I would have enjoyed this game a lot with better gameplay, which is disappointing because I actually really like the story and the way it made me feel. I like a good mix of story and gameplay, and this mix is pretty lopsided, so I give Manhunt a 6 out of 10. Sadly, the gameplay let me down. Congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. Thank you so very much for watching. I appreciate all of you for clicking on the video. Please consider supporting me via the cool buttons down below, such as the subscribe button and the like button. Thanks again, and I hope to see you all later. Bye bye.